film opens with Jennifer Hills, a novelist who leaves the bustling city of New York to retreat to a secluded spot where she can work on her next book undisturbed. She rents a cabin in Louisiana from an elderly man named Earl, who provides her with a map and instructions to ensure she won't get lost in the remote area. After settling the payment, Jennifer sets off for Louisiana in her car. Along the way, she stops at a gas station to refuel and verify the cabin's location, asking for directions from the attendant on duty. The attendant, Johnny Miller, seems captivated by Jennifer's beauty and attempts to flirt with her, much to the amusement of his friends Andy Cherini and Stanley Woods, who laugh as Johnny's advances fall flat, causing Jennifer to leave hastily. Irritated by her rejection, Johnny harbors thoughts of teaching her a lesson. Eventually, Jennifer reaches the secluded cabin by the lake, surrounded by woods. Pleased with its isolation, she looks forward to working on her novel in peace. After settling in, she takes a moment to relax by the lake with a glass of wine. Later that night, while chatting on the phone on the cabin porch, she hears strange noises nearby, prompting her to bravely investigate. She discovers a shed filled with various tools but finds nothing particularly suspicious, convincing herself that the noises might have come from rats. On another day, as Jennifer washes clothes in the cabin sink, someone secretly records her through the window without her knowledge. The following morning, she goes jogging and discovers an abandoned house in the woods, similar to the shed she found before, filled with the same kinds of tools. Though curious, she returns to the cabin without much concern and resumes her work. When she tries to wash her face, however, she is alarmed to find murky water coming from the tap, and the toilet suddenly becomes clogged. Jennifer contacts Earl to report these issues, only for her phone to accidentally fall into the toilet after the call. Earl sends a plumber, Matthew Duncan, to fix the toilet, and he completes the task quickly before bidding Jennifer farewell. Meanwhile, Johnny and his friends are lounging by the lake close to Jennifer's cabin. Matthew joins them and, to impress the group, lies about Jennifer kissing him while he was fixing the plumbing. Stanley, who has been secretly recording Jennifer in the cabin, shares a video of her washing clothes, stirring Johnny's anger. His resentment over Jennifer's earlier rejection fuels him to convince his friends to confront her with disturbing intentions. That night, Jennifer is seen inhaling illegal drugs, eventually passing out. However, she suddenly senses someone outside her cabin, prompting her to go out and check the yard. Finding no one around, she turns back toward the cabin, only to be startled by a bird carcass lying on the porch. Without much thought, she moves it aside and re-enters the cabin. Inside, she notices that her laptop's wallpaper has changed to a photo of Johnny and his friends, sparking a feeling of unease. As she begins to comprehend the situation, Jennifer realizes that Johnny and his friends have already entered the cabin. Frightened, she tries to make them leave, but they ignore her protests. Johnny begins to intimidate her, and just as they're about to harm her, Jennifer manages to escape, fleeing into the woods. There she encounters Earl, who is hunting with his friend Sheriff Storch. Relieved, she reports the events to them. Storch tells Earl to go home, assuring him that he and Jennifer will return to the cabin to investigate. Armed with a rifle, Storch accompanies Jennifer back to the cabin, ordering Johnny and his group to come out and surrender. However, the cabin appears deserted, as if they fled. While inspecting the cabin, Storch discovers alcohol and drugs left behind by Jennifer. Doubting her story, Storch accuses her of lying about the events. Jennifer tries to explain her ordeal, but at that moment, Johnny and his friends return to the cabin. To Jennifer's shock, Storch makes no effort to defend her. Instead, it's revealed that he has been conspiring with Johnny and the others all along. Trapped and unable to escape, Jennifer is forced to endure as Johnny compels Matthew to assault her. Following this, Johnny and his group lead her into the woods, where they continue to torment her, with Stanley recording everything and mocking her suffering. Afterward, Jennifer, bruised and in distress, stumbles naked through the woods while Johnny and his friends follow her. Reaching a bridge, she turns back to see Storch preparing to shoot her. But in a last act of defiance, she jumps from the bridge into the river. Concerned about leaving evidence, Storch orders Johnny and the others to search the river to ensure Jennifer has died and can't expose them. He also instructs Stanley to destroy the recording and burn Jennifer's belongings to erase all traces of their crimes. Days later, Matthew is seen at the river, searching for Jennifer's body, haunted by regret over his actions. A month passes, and Jennifer's family, deeply concerned about her unexplained absence, contacts Earl to inquire about her. Equally disturbed and unable to provide answers, Earl reaches out to Storch, informing him that Jennifer's family plans to report her disappearance to the police. Meanwhile, Stanley grows anxious when he realizes the video cassette containing footage of Jennifer has vanished, likely stolen by someone. He had previously destroyed a blank cassette in front of Storch and the others, intending to keep the real recording for himself. Reluctantly, Stanley informs Johnny and the others about the missing tape, which infuriates Johnny so much that he nearly attacks Stanley. Fortunately, Andy intervenes, calming Johnny and urging them to find a solution instead. That night, Johnny is startled when he discovers a dead bird left on his doorstep, a chilling reminder of the bird he had left on Jennifer's porch. As he turns back toward his house, he hears rustling in the bushes nearby. Investigating, he finds no one, only some rubber bands scattered around, which he recognizes as belonging to Matthew. At the same time, Storch arrives home from work to find a video cassette waiting for him, sent by Jennifer. Panicking, he fears his wife may discover his actions, but he feels relieved to learn she hasn't opened it, assuming it to be an empty tape. Soon after, Storch confronts Johnny and his friends, reprimanding Stanley for failing to destroy the evidence as instructed, knowing that any slip-up could expose their crimes. Disturbed by these recent events, Johnny and the group suspect that Matthew, plagued by guilt, might be behind the mysterious happenings. Storch orders Johnny and the others to confront Matthew. On another occasion, Storch invites Earl to go hunting, as they often do. During a brief break, Storch suddenly shoots Earl, eliminating him as a potential witness to Jennifer's disappearance, especially given Earl's knowledge of someone disturbing her at the cabin. Simultaneously, Matthew arrives at Earl's cabin, only to be startled by Jennifer's voice. Terrified, he stumbles down the stairs, losing consciousness. When he regains his senses, Matthew is stunned to see Jennifer, alive and seeking revenge. Despite understanding that Matthew regrets his actions and was less complicit, Jennifer refuses to forgive him and grabs a rope to strangle him. Elsewhere, Andy and Stanley search the woods for Matthew. At the lake's edge, Andy spots a figure he believes to be Matthew and immediately follows, only to be startled by Stanley's sudden appearance. As they regroup, they hear Matthew's voice coming from an abandoned house in the woods. When Stanley moves closer to investigate, he triggers a bear trap Jennifer had set, leaving him screaming in pain with a broken leg. Hearing Stanley's cries, Andy tries to help, but Jennifer ambushes him from behind, striking him with a stick. When Andy regains consciousness, he finds himself tied above a bathtub that is slowly filling with water, while Stanley, immobilized by his injury, is helpless. Jennifer, bent on revenge, films Stanley, making him experience the same terror she endured as she takes control over those who once tormented her. Jennifer's vengeance continued as she devised a particularly brutal punishment for Stanley, tying him to a tree and attaching 2 fishing hooks to his eyelids, leaving him helpless in that agonizing state. After tormenting Stanley, Jennifer returned to the house where Andy was restrained above the bathtub. She forced his face into the water and, unsatisfied, added powdered lye to intensify the agony, causing his face to blister until he succumbed to the burns and drowned. Meanwhile, Stanley, bleeding profusely, was attacked by crows, leading to a prolonged and horrific death. At the gas station, Johnny was working his shift as usual when Jennifer appeared unexpectedly, knocking him unconscious. When he regained consciousness, he found himself bound in an abandoned room, his mouth gagged with a rusty iron bar. Jennifer exacted her revenge by slowly extracting his teeth, one by one, until he died from the relentless torture. Meanwhile, the Storch, who was on patrol, received a call from Jennifer, claiming to be with his daughter, Chastity. In a panic, Storch rushed home, only for his wife to inform him that Chastity was playing in the park with Jennifer. Desperate to find her, Storch sped to the park, but he couldn't locate his daughter. As he returned to his car, Jennifer ambushed him from the back seat, rendering him unconscious. When Storch awoke, he was bound in an isolated house in the woods, with a rifle aimed directly at him. Pleading for mercy, Storch confessed his regret, but Jennifer remained unmoved, intensifying his suffering. As her final act, Jennifer fastened the rifle's trigger to Matthew's hand, who was still unconscious nearby. When Matthew eventually stirred, disoriented, he accidentally moved his hand, triggering the rifle. The shot killed both Storch and himself. In the film's closing scene, Jennifer stands outside the empty house, smiling as she hears the fatal gunshot from inside, knowing that her tormentors had met their end. The moral of this dark tale? If you ever rent a cabin, make sure the only thing lurking around is your inspiration, not sinister neighbors or hidden cameras.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.